Why, hello everybody, I'm Eternal Flame here, and today I'm here to do a discussion on Megumi, Yuji, and Sukuna, and how all of them will have a final role in the narrative, and most of all, just basically what my opinion is going to be on Megumi and his future. Now, while yes, this is a Megumi-focused video, I do think Yuji and Sukuna are also going to have some importance in this, mainly because the entire story of Jujutsu Kaisen and their stories have always revolved around the three of them as a whole. They have always been important to each other, being Megumi, Yuji, and Sukuna. Which to prove that all of JJK happens because of these three coexisting with each other and each of them making their own decisions. For example, JJK never would have happened without Yuji eating the finger of Sukuna, which means JJK wouldn't have happened unless Yuji and Sukuna existed. However, what was the reason that Yuji ate a finger of Sukuna? It was because Megumi told him that by eating a finger of Sukuna, it could be possible for him to awaken Curse energy. Or more specifically that Megumi warned him not to do it, but you get the point. Now, of course, yes, Kenjaku has some importance as well, considering Kenjaku planned all of this out, and without Kenjaku, none of this would have happened to begin with, but to say these three are the most important characters in Jujutsu Kaisen, or at least some of the most important, would be an understatement. Even right now, considering the main importance and focus of the arc is saving Megumi from Sukuna, which has all happened because of Yuji and Megumi's own mistakes. And well, of course, Sukuna being Sukuna as well, because Sukuna is not immune to blame, because Sukuna did cause quite a bit of this to happen to begin with as well. All of this is just to say Megumi is certainly going to have a role in the final battle in the future, and there have been some speculation on what that role that Megumi is going to have in the future is going to be. Whether it's he's going to activate the merger, or he's going to be the final villain, or he's going to be the key to taking out Sukuna, and I'm going to talk about all of those today. However, before we get into this video, if you like JJK discussions, then be sure to subscribe. We have a lot more on the channel, so without further ado, let's actually get into this. Now, before I do talk about what Megumi's role is going to be in the end of the series, I do need to go over Megumi's entire journey and what he represents as a character, or at least in my opinion, what he represents as a character and what his journey has been about. I have talked about this before in the past, how each and every single one of the JJK characters represents self in some way, shape, or form, with their massive character themes all centering around self. Yuji Itadori, for example, and his entire theme of self-purpose, where for all of Jujutsu Kaisen, Yuji has been living for others. It started out as Yuji living because of his grandfather and his grandfather's final wishes. That was what Yuji had lived for. Then it moved on to him living for Nanami and Megumi and their goals. That was the entire reason he entered into the Culling Games, because it was Megumi's goal and Megumi's wishes. Megumi's request for Yuji to save him by helping out with saving Tsumiki. However, Yuji's character arc finally went to him having his own purpose for himself, his own purpose that he has fully dedicated himself to, which is saving Megumi. Or Gojo and his entire story, which completely revolves around self-identity, with Gojo wondering who he was as a person, with no one who was actually able to ever give him that answer. Only coming to that answer when he was finally relieved of the title of being the strongest and he was truly able to see who he was all along, which was Gojo Satoru. Now, I might end up making videos for both Gojo and Yuji, as well as other characters and how their character arcs all represent self in some way, shape, or form, but now we are going to go into Megumi. So you might be wondering, how does Megumi's journey represent self in some way, shape, or form? What is the general themes of Megumi's story? Well, Megumi's story has always been about self-reliance. This is shown as early back to when Megumi had first awakened his domain expansion, where Megumi's greatest flaw was viewing Jujutsu sorcery as a team sport. After all, while teamwork was important for Jujutsu sorcerers, it still had a massive flaw, because if Megumi became reliant on teamwork, reliant on people being able to pick up for his weaknesses, he would end up dying alone, as Gojo himself put it. This was such a massive flaw for Megumi that it didn't actually allow him to fight at all at his best, and he basically had a mental roadblock until he got over it, and then he ended up awakening a domain expansion, showing the potential that Sukuna and Gojo had both complemented in Megumi. However, while Megumi started to rely on himself, which is shown both in how confident he was in being able to utilize his domain expansion to save others, Megumi still had issues that he was still relying on other people a little bit too much. This flaw of relying on others, believing that others could handle this, is best shown back during the Reggie fight when he killed the guy who had claw hands. Where his immediate thought after killing them, realizing that it didn't make sense for him to kill him, was for him to not panic and believe in everyone else. In a way, you could also argue Megumi ended up suffering because of this flaw of relying on other people, because Megumi's purpose was still ultimately to save Tsumiki. Megumi's purpose was living for someone else and not living for himself. As a result of that, he ended up losing Tsumiki and Tsumiki dying at the hands of Sukuna, all to make sure that Megumi's will was broken that much more. Where Yuji could rely on himself and rely on his ability to fulfill other people's dreams and hope, Megumi could not do that. Megumi needed someone else alive in order for him to be able to continue working, for him to continue living. But in the words of a wise man, if you're nothing without it, then you shouldn't have it. Now, how does this ultimately come back into what Megumi's final role in this story is going to be? Well, Megumi does have one final important role, which is saving himself. Now, this entire arc has all been centered around saving Megumi from Sukuna, getting Megumi out from Sukuna's hands. It's extremely clear in Yuji's moveset that he develops in order to fight Sukuna, all the way down to how all of the characters are fighting, that they are fighting in order to save Megumi. Characters have put their lives on the line in order to save Megumi. However, this was something we were told extremely early on. Only people who want to be saved can be saved. It's why ultimately I believe Megumi is going to end up finding his own purpose, and that purpose is going to be killing Sukuna, in a similar ideal to how Yuji's purpose right now is killing Sukuna. After all, the only one who can find Megumi's purpose is Megumi himself. Sure, Yuji can reach his hand out as many times as possible in order to try and get Megumi out, but that won't do anything. The only one who can get Megumi out, the only one who can take that hand is Megumi, and for Megumi to do that, he needs to develop a will of his own. Not a will reliant on the life of someone else, but a will that is reliant on his own life. And that's what everyone else's fight has been for against Sukuna up to this point, in order to try and ignite that will into Megumi for him to live on his own, in order to ignite that will for Megumi to fight back. It's also why I very heavily don't think that Megumi is going to turn evil. While yes, I do think Megumi's entire story is self-reliant, and that Megumi is going to need to learn how to rely on himself, I think if that led into Megumi turning evil, it would completely throw out this entire journey up to this point and the entire purpose of this fight. Like, it would make this entire arc meaningless in a way, all for the sake of some cruel irony. Now, it could be possible that JJK could actually end up doing this right, because I believe more so in execution, so I'm not going to fully put my judgment down yet, but I do not like the idea of it that much. However, if JJK ends up executing it really well, then my judgment will be retracted. Now, I will say this, it does also make sense if Megumi were to turn evil. I would not blame him at all considering everything that has happened up to this point, but Megumi turning evil and just blaming it all on like Yuji or some of the other characters, in my opinion, would be a really bad move. So now I'm going to go into what I think Megumi's final narrative role is going to be, as well as what his final power-up is going to be and how he's going to contribute in the final battle. Now, I do think he's going to actually have two final roles in the narrative, which both of these roles are very possible. However, one of these roles is much more likely than the other, which that first role, I think Megumi is going to utilize an open barrier domain in his battle against Sukuna, in the inner plane of himself and Sukuna's soul. The reason why I think that is likely is mainly because, as I pointed out in my previous video about if Yuji would awaken a domain expansion or not, Megumi's power-ups had always been shown throughout the method of a domain expansion. Furthermore, we have also most recently found out that a large portion of Yuji's talent in Jujutsu Sorcery and Jujutsu Energy Control came from the fact that Sukuna was dwelling within his body. Now, I don't think that's the only reason why Yuji is talented, but that's the reason why Kusakabe said that Yuji is talented. However, while Sukuna had only been active and around Yuji's body for probably less than an hour, in comparison to how long he's been active in Megumi's body, which has been over a month. Which that in itself is going to cause a massive power-up for Megumi, especially considering Megumi also has an even deeper amount of the fingers inside of him. Pause. So not just does it logically make sense for Megumi to get a massive power-up to his Cursed Energy Control because of how much experience he's going to get from Sukuna's talent, you know, considering he's been having Sukuna active for massively longer than Yuji has had Sukuna active for, it also fits very narratively well if Megumi does end up getting an open barrier domain expansion. This is mainly because of what a domain expansion is made to represent, which a domain expansion is made to represent the peak of absolute selfishness, but also the peak of absolute understanding of oneself, because it is your own world. So Megumi's reward for his entire journey so far being this own domain expansion, being perfected and at the absolute peak of Jujutsu, makes a lot of sense in my opinion. It's also why I think JJK held off on showing what would happen when free domains back when Yuta, Uro, and Ryu clashed domain expansions. Not just as a method of hiding Yuta Akotsu's domain, but also hiding the result of 3 separate domains clashing, because I actually think it's very, very likely that Yuji is also going to awaken his own domain expansion, and we're going to get the 3 pillars of Jujutsu actually clashing domains. Though I don't think it's going to be a 3-way domain expansion clash, I think it's going to be 2 domains targeted on Sukuna's domain, as that would be the ultimate representation of a battle of ideals, something that's already happening between Yuji and Sukuna, as Sukuna had directly stated that Yuji Itadori was the only one who could rival him on ideals. However, it would be quite fitting if, as a result of Sukuna's actions and everyone else trying to save Megumi, that Megumi also ended up with ideals that were on par of that of Sukuna and Yuji's. That, and I also feel that it's extremely fair for Megumi to get some final moments against Sukuna as well, considering the fact that Sukuna has hurt Megumi debatably more than he has hurt anyone else, Yuji included. So if anyone deserves to put Sukuna down, it is certainly Megumi. So Megumi and Yuji putting down Sukuna together through winning the Battle of Ideals would be a really good way to end the story, especially considering it would come full circle. It started with Megumi, Yuji, and Sukuna, so it's only fair that it ends with Megumi, Yuji, and Sukuna. However, I think that Megumi has a much bigger role than even beating Sukuna, which has to do completely with the merger. Now, just because I don't think Megumi is going to go evil or want revenge on Yuji doesn't mean I don't think that Megumi is going to have revenge as a new type of motivation for him. Instead, the revenge that I think Megumi is going to seek is going to be on cursed energy as a whole, rather than just the characters themselves. Now, you might be wondering, why would Megumi want to have revenge on cursed energy? And it's a simple question. What good has cursed energy ever done for Megumi in his life? Because I can tell you what it has done to him for certain. It made him the target of the Zenin clan because he had a curse technique that was really good. It also made him the target of Ryomen Sukuna, you know, the king of curses. Speaking of that, it also allowed the person who took the life of his sister to come back to life to begin with. It's also the entire reason that the Calling Games happened as a whole, in order to optimize curse energy because of this madman named Kenjaku who wanted to optimize the power system. Like, sure, yeah, it gave him a curse technique to be able to fight with, but that curse technique has just made him a target most of the time. Sure, yeah, it gave him a domain expansion, but the thing he had to awaken a domain expansion against was something that was spawned in by cursed energy to begin with. All of the positives that he'd been given for cursed energy were to fix the negatives that cursed energy had ended up putting on him. Even the name of cursed energy is just simply a curse. Remember, cursed energy is still a pretty negative and evil power source. It's not like they're actually using a good power source or the opposite of curses. No, they're just using curses to get rid of curses. Now yes, it should also be noted, Kenjaku and Sukuna are still to be taken blame for their actions. Cursed energy was the tool for them to act out their actions. It was still ultimately used in the end to cause so much pain, especially to him. Which it also needs to be remembered what the ultimate goal of Jujutsu sorcerers are, which that ultimate goal is to kill curses, using curses to kill curses. That has always been what the goal of a Jujutsu sorcerer is. It's just there's never been an answer on a way to permanently deal with all cursed energy. Or, well, of course there were actual answers on how to deal with cursed energy permanently, which Yuki had come up with herself, which the three answers on how to deal with cursed energy permanently was answer A, by making every single human on the planet heavily restricted, B, making it so every human could learn cursed energy, and C, which the one that Geto came up with, killing everyone who wasn't a sorcerer. Now, there was never really a way to do this on a mass scale easily, and of course it was possible for people to do it, but it would take time, at least until now. Which is how I think Jujutsu Kaisen is going to end. I see JJK ending in one of two ways, mainly because it's something that needs to be noted. In my opinion, cursed energy has always been the main villain. Cursed energy has always been the enemy, so I don't see JJK ending with cursed energy still existing. I think the merger is going to be utilized in one of two ways, either to permanently purge away cursed energy and make everyone a heavenly restriction user, or B, and that is to create an entirely new energy source, one that transcends cursed energy as a whole, completing Kenjaku's actual plan while also merging it with Yuki's plan of permanently getting rid of cursed energy. All while allowing Megumi to get his revenge for everything that has happened and being the ultimate loss of Sukuna. After all, Sukuna represented the absolute peak and apex of Jujutsu, and by him being transcended by something that doesn't represent Jujutsu at all would be the true ultimate defeat of Sukuna. Now, I will admit this idea did come from Alonzi, so shout out to him about using the merger for this very purpose. However, this is how I very much see JJK ending. However, that's just my opinion on this entire theory, so I want to hear what you guys think in the comment section down below. I'm gonna see y'all later. Peace out. Have a good day.